This is Purple Radio.
Hello, and welcome to Purple Radio's one-on-one interviews with the Durham students nominated to stand as candidates in the upcoming Students' Union election. My name is Gabriel Radis. I'm station manager of Purple Radio, and I'll be interviewing each presidential candidate one by one. And this is my fourth of the day, and I am interviewing our fourth candidate, obviously, and that's Joe Simmons, in no particular order, of course. And the structure of this interview will be exactly the same as the other three interviews that you would have listened to. We will first look at eligibility, and then we'll have a look at policies. The SU will be our third topic, and finally, we'll look at Durham on a whole, and Durham University in general. So, Joe, how are you today?
Oh, okay, thank you. How are you, Gabriel?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. And obviously, we should probably stress that whilst we're abbreviating your name to Joe, it's going to be Joseph Harry Simmons on the election card.
Oh no, it won't. It'll be Joe Simmons.
Joe Simmons. Well, there we go. It's a very good one to clear up first. I guess on the subject of eligibility, why Durham SU president, Joe?
Why? Well, Durham University is in crisis at the moment, and there's no doubt about that. The pandemic has devastated the student experience. The DSU is perceived as undemocratic, unrepresentative, and poor value for money. And Sunday Night Clue is still cancelled. As president of the DSU, I will tackle COVID-19 head-on, democratize the DSU, and rebuild Durham in the interest of students. Now, I'm an outsider candidate, and only an outsider can solve the problems facing the DSU, and only an outsider knows the real problems going on at Durham University. I haven't really been involved in politics during my time at Durham University, and the reason why is I found the political scene very polarizing and quite toxic, in fact, and you can't really participate almost without fear of your reputation being ruined. So I'm here as a non-partisan candidate. I'm here to represent everybody in Durham, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of the associations that they're part of. And I'm going to make the problems facing Durham centre to my campaign.
You mentioned that you've stayed out of student politics in order to, because you don't want to, in theory, I guess, drag your name through the mud and be at the behest of a number of people that might want to see your downfall. I'm sure you must be aware of the fact that being SU president might well do just exactly that. And how equipped are you to deal with the fact that you will be throwing yourself into a political, or become a political football?
Absolutely, I'm ready. I'm ready for this. I am perfectly happy with sacrificing my privacy, sacrificing my anonymity, and getting involved and getting stuck in to address the issues facing Durham University, students at Durham University.
Sure, but you've not had any experience of doing anything like this, and it's all well and good having an outsider, but also the SU presidency requires, I guess, a degree of understanding how to manage a team and be a spokesperson for 20,000 plus students. Do you feel comfortable about doing that?
Absolutely. I actually run my own company, so I'm a company director of my own publishing firm, and the skills that you learn from that are extremely important. You need to learn how to communicate with your customers. And one thing that I notice about the DSU currently is they're not doing a very good job at communicating the good things that they're doing, and people are getting very, very, very frustrated with that. You also learn how to have a vision as well as running your own business. What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? You need to have a plan ready. And I've spent 2 months now working on a manifesto that addresses the needs and wants of every student in Durham University. I have a very, very exciting program ready for everybody to have a look at over the next couple of days, the next couple of weeks. So no, I don't think lacking experience in terms of student politics is necessarily an obstacle. I think that if anything, it's an advantage.
Sure. You mentioned that you run your own company. What will happen to that company if you were to become SU president, which is obviously a full-time job and a paid job?
Of course. The company sells books. So I wrote a book during my gap year when I was reapplying to university. It's a very small-scale business, very part-time. With the pandemic at the moment and with teaching turning online, it's not really yeah, it's not really been that big of a deal. I've got plenty of time to manage it. I'm committed to serving as SU president full time. I won't be, my business won't, come anywhere near to, undermining or taking or distracting me from my commitment and my duties as SU president.
You have obviously, we mentioned the fact that you say you're an outsider. We've had a couple of people that have said they're outsiders actually today.
Really?
What qualifies you over the other outsiders, quote unquote?
I think it's my commitment. I have spent, I've gotten in touch with over 100 student groups, trying to find out, what do you want? What do you need? And what a lot of people have said is that, the DSU isn't really interested in people beyond beyond its very almost narrow interests. I've gotten in touch with sport teams. I've gotten in touch with political societies. I've gotten in touch with welfare teams. I've gotten in touch with student-led businesses and entrepreneurs. I think my commitment is what separates me and what distinguishes me from the other candidates. I have a very clear vision about what I want to do as SU president. I have the willingness and commitment to deliver it, and I actually cannot wait to get on with doing it.
Fair enough. I guess probably now we can have a look at policies. Now that we're having touched on eligibility a bit. Now, you asked me earlier whether I wanted to have a look at your manifesto, and I declined because no one else has had a look. No one else has sent me their manifesto, so I don't want to. In the interest of impartiality, it was important, but I do want to know now what your major policies are. So pray do tell. Almost.
Of course, yeah. So my manifesto, the way I've presented it, is separated into three main themes. One, we'll be tackling COVID-19 head on. Two, we'll be democratizing the DSU. And three, we'll be rebuilding Durham in the interest of students. So I'll talk a bit about tackling COVID-19 head on. I will work with Durham University to coordinate a campus-wide vaccination program if insufficient numbers of students are vaccinated by October 2021. I will ensure that mental health support is well-resourced and well-coordinated across the entire university, especially between the college student support and the academic departments. I will lobby Durham University to extend the safety net policy into the next academic year, and I will work to reschedule the cancelled matriculation and graduation ceremonies for later in 2022. On democratizing the DSU, I will establish the DSU Constitutional Convention composed of elected student representatives, which will be tasked with redesigning the DSU's political system with the following guiding principles in mind. It will work to build a constitutional structure that reflects Durham University's collegiate system. It will introduce a system of checks and balances so that the officers don't have too much power in the DSU. It will have a clear separation of powers. So we will be kicking the officers out of the DSU assembly. And we'll also be working to introduce a fully elected DSU assembly with its very own speaker. The recommendations of the DSU Constitutional Convention will be subject to approval by a campus-wide yes-no referendum. And finally, on rebuilding Durham in the interest of students, I will lobby Durham University to halt any increases in college rent and improve the quality of college accommodation. I will seek to introduce a three-tier academic support system that removes the requirement for medical evidence except in cases of serious adverse circumstances. I will promote social inclusion by addressing the issues facing international students and minority groups at Durham University. I will rebuild the relationship between the DSU and the student press by working to restore part funding for the printed edition of the Palatinate. And I will be tackling bullying, harassment, and discrimination by promoting Durham University's report and support tool and working with the Durham Constabulary. How does that sound?
I mean, I don't want to be a naysayer, but it does sound like quite a lot to do in a very short space of time. And I think it's important to first identify what's the mandate. How are you going to be able to enact all of these changes all by yourself, all in the space of what will in effect be 9 or even 7 short months?
Well, the good thing about building a manifesto before taking on the role is that I will be ready to go from the get-go. That day one, I'll be ready to go. I'll know what I want to do, and I'll go about setting about going about doing it. I'll also be adopting a much less adversarial relationship with Durham University. I'll be very interested in building very productive and friendly relationships with members of university staff. You know, relationships are the key to delivering policies across a large organization. I'll also be working very closely with my other officers as well to coordinate and deliver program proposals within their policy areas. I'll also be working with student groups as well to build up momentum and build up and campaign as well to get these proposals through, and so on and so forth.
I don't know if you're much of a politics geek, but it sounds quite Burkean in that I mean you have mentioned that there'll be referenda, but a lot of it is guided by your ideas of what you envisage the SU structure to be, and it's a fundamental change to the SU structure. What happens if people just aren't keen for it? What happens if everyone says no SU assembly, no speaker, no separation of powers, etc.? Where does that leave you?
I don't think it will get to that situation. From looking at the democracy review, it's quite clear that people don't feel represented by the SU or their interests are represented. Only 17% said that they felt represented by the SU. 26 felt there was little room for debate. 30% felt that the DSU talks about issues relevant to students, and only 30% felt that they knew how to get involved if they wanted to. People are very keen to change the DSU for the better, and that's the response that I've gotten from speaking with so many people, is that people don't want to see the DSU burnt to the ground. They want to, change it for the better. They want to see it become a real student union that represents the issues important to them, and that's absolutely key. And if they decide to throw up a no in the referendum, well, I guess we'll have to work it out when we get there. But I seriously doubt we'll ever get to that point.
I mean, okay, fine, but it's important to work out contingency plans, and I guess that maybe leads to a greater theme of you have done some small stuff, you've run your own small company and stuff, but managing a team and managing being president of 20,000 plus students is very difficult to define exactly what everyone thinks and how everyone thinks it. You'll come across challenges and you'll come across people that don't agree with you.
Absolutely.
What are those contingency plans? What will you do if people aren't happy with it?
Well, it's important to listen to them. I mean, that's what the whole wrong controversy was about, was that people weren't listened to. I'm perfectly happy to be told that, I'm wrong. And I'm perfectly happy to be proved that I'm wrong as well. There's no shame in being told that your ideas might not work. I've come up with numerous ideas that might not work in practice. That's okay, and we'll alter the plans and we'll alter the proposals depending on what comes up. We've got a very I'm perfectly very flexible when it comes to implementing programs.
I think it's you mentioned the SU assembly. You said you'd kick off officers. I'm presuming you're kicking yourself off that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
I guess it is important to talk about representation in this sense, because how would you go about giving up different representation? I don't want to get too much into the nitty gritty, but is it going to be something akin to House of Representatives, proportional to number of students, or are we looking at a Senate, sort of US Senate type two people per college sort of situation that you're envisaging anyway?
I mean, in my own view, and I'm perfectly happy to be told by the Constitutional Convention that we'd rather not go down this route, but I would envision it very similar to the United States. So 4 representatives per college. One of the things that the Democracy Review revealed was that I think it was something like 80% of people identify with their colleges. Colleges are the key at Durham, and I really just can't understand why the DSU hasn't already adopted a structure that reflects the collegiate system.
That's very fair enough. I do want to pick up on something that you perhaps didn't mention. I want to see whether it's perhaps an oversight or whether it's an intentional omission. The Culture Commission that currently exists now. What's
Yes.
going to happen with the Culture Commission?
Oh, absolutely. No, I've accounted for that exactly, is that I will be reviewing the recommendations of the Culture Commission and taking action accordingly. The problem with the Culture Commission at the minute is it hasn't even started writing its report. So, and I have tried to get in touch with members of the Culture Commission. I have got in touch with a few, but at the minute progress is quite slow on that front. So I wish I could say something much more concrete on the Culture Commission, but
well, how do you feel about say this? Okay, so they've not written their report, but you want to come in as a new president. You want to ask the president that set up the commission, and then work with the team that she set up. How do you feel about working with someone else's team and starting a report that's not yours?
That's perfectly fine with me. It's, I want to, there are problems in Durham, there's no doubt about that. And, if this is clearly important to Shern, and this is going to be her defining, I believe, going to be her defining contribution. And I definitely want to make good on that. I'm perfectly happy to work with her team and find practical ways of implementing its proposals and recommendations.
Sure. Let's touch on the SU. And first, let's look at the RON candidates and the type of RON candidates that we have this year. Do you think that was a good move from the SU to include these multifaceted, different RON candidates?
No, I don't think it was a good idea. I think that it made things seem more complicated than it had to be. And I think that it upset a lot of people because it made it seem like they were trying to make it more difficult for Ron to win. I think it was a PR mistake. I don't think that it will have any real practical consequences, but I do think that it was a mistake for them to have done
that. To that end, what would you do? Let's transpose, and I've asked a couple of people this. In fact, all the candidates. I'm interested to see your opinion on this. Let's transpose last year's results.
Yeah.
Of Ron winning and in last year's case it was Shern coming second. Let's say you were to come second to Ron this year.
Yeah.
Would you feel like you were given the correct mandate in order to exact your proposals, and would you even accept the presidency?
No, I wouldn't.
What would you do then? Would you just is that it? Are you out of the race? What do you call for re-election? What's your plan?
Call for re-election, and the DSU has made contingencies for this as well. I would be disappointed if people voted wrong, given I think that this year has some really good candidates actually. It's on all the races, and I think that I've got a very ambitious and exciting program that will address their concerns. But if they're going to vote wrong, and I really hope they don't, but if they do, then I'm perfectly happy to accept the judgment of the student body. And whether I would run again would depend on whether it would be suitable with me complete my degree program.
Sure. To vis-a-vis the SU in itself, in July 2020, the Palatinate announced that, or rather wrote a report in which a former, I think it was the former president of the Labour Club, said that the found a stat, and I'm sort of referencing him now, that Durham Student Union was the lowest of 137 student unions in the UK with student satisfaction. There is obviously a massive issue with apathy towards the SU or the student union as an entity. Do you feel like your policies are going to change that? And do you think that it's something that's transcends just policy making?
Absolutely, yeah. The National Student Survey returns this result every year, where around 30% of students say that the DSU does not represent students' academic interests. And I've got an entire slate of policies on the academic experience. So, I'm working to introduce a 3-tier academic support system. I'm working to reform exam and feedback. I'm working to reform teaching quality. I'm also seeking to improve on Durham's IT infrastructure, work on academic skills, and even introducing a reading week. What annoys me about the DSU is that the DSU doesn't really respond to criticism very well. So this result has been thrown up year after year, and their way of responding to it was essentially saying that, oh, well, the National Student Survey is bad because it promotes the marketization of university education, which is basically, I know it's a bit of a cop-out, and I don't think that they quite get it, and that's, I don't think that they quite get how to improve itself. I think that, you know, their current stance is that, oh, if only people knew how wonderful we were. I think that it definitely needs to improve on. I definitely think it's a case of policy. I think it's definitely a case of communication as well. The Durham Students' Union is not very good at communication at all.
Sure, communication we can touch on. I just want to pull you up on the academics you mentioned.
Hmm.
And I don't want to, I don't want to be too. It's only half joking, really, when I say this. Are you sure you're not applying for the next vice chancellor? Because how much jurisdiction do you have over introducing a reading week, for example? I mean, these are things that, you know, might look great on paper and certainly are sexy,
Yeah.
for want of a better word. But it's not really within your remit. So do you think by promising the earth in a sort of pseudo magic money tree situation that by not being able to deliver on all of these, you'll be deemed as a failure and really struggle?
Not at all. I don't think a reading week is a bad idea at all. I think that I don't think I'm promising the earth.
It's not really about whether it's a bad idea or not. It's just more like,
Oh, okay.
can you actually do it? I mean, it's not really within your remit to introduce a reading week, is it?
No, it's all about lobbying. It's all about building relationships with the university, and that's why I'm very keen to develop a less adversarial relationship. I think that it's done enormous harm. I think that it prevents the student union getting its work done. I think that it's been bad for students, and I think that that needs to stop. There's various ways that you can bring about pressure within an organization. You need to be lobbying people at different levels of the bureaucracy. One of the things I would have liked to have seen with the safety net policy was the SU, you know, almost like an all hands on deck operation where they were lobbying members of staff at all levels of the university to ensure that they get the best possible deal. I believe it's going to come out either today or tomorrow, so we'll see how well that turned out. But you are right, you know, the student union president isn't, you know, all powerful or, you know, all being individual, and it will definitely depend on the SU's president's credibility, their, you know, ability to build relationships, and so on and so forth.
You mentioned COVID-19 before, your COVID-19 plan. Have you been impressed with what the SU has done thus far?
Not really. It's been quite. I can't help but feel that the SU has been asleep until January, and then after everybody reacted quite negatively towards the fact that the SU hadn't signed on to the Russell Group letter, that suddenly the SU just suddenly woke up and decided, okay, we're going to start doing, you know, we're going to start doing things now. It was pretty much on day one that, you know, after they came back, that they started finally working on the safety net policy, which, I mean, I've tried to work it out from reading the officers' weekly updates, but it didn't enter the sort of didn't enter into discussion until January. I believe that they've been pursuing the no detriment policy all year up until now, and the university had repeatedly turned around and said no, but they had continued to lobby for it nonetheless rather than accepting the reality of it. I think that yeah, I think it's been very slow, and there's all kinds of practical things that the SU could do at the minute. So in terms of the study spaces situation, they could definitely look into asking the university to open up lecture theatres and classrooms to allow more people to get out of their rooms and go study somewhere else at the university. No, I haven't been very impressed. I think it's been very slow. I think that the SU has been very narrow in its outlook, and I think that the consensus among the people I've spoken to is that they haven't really done much on the COVID-19 front.
We haven't touched on a policy that admittedly wasn't we haven't spoken about here now, and to kind of been a fundamental part of this year, or has shaped the media outlook of this year, and it has been the Palatinate question, with obviously the USU cutting funding for the Palatinate. Where do you stand on this?
I stand on restoring part funding to the Palatinate until the Durham Students' Union is out of its financial funding crisis.
And if that means that you have to cut funding or have to be a part of the funding cuts in other areas, Do you feel comfortable in that with that being the case?
Well, I think there is, because the DSU is quite a big organisation. You know, it's got an income of around £2.4 million. It receives £1 million off of the university, and I think that it spends its money relatively inefficiently. I mean, it does spend almost in 2019 it spent almost £1 million on staff costs. And problem with that is that year, you had that year, the NSS study survey came in saying that people weren't happy with the DSU. I don't think that they're necessarily getting value for money. They're not getting the biggest bang for their buck by spending with their current spending arrangements. So there's definitely areas that we can cut back on spending and look to reallocate money, because at the end of the day, the student unions for students.
There have been accusations as to a lack of transparency, a lack of at the SU. Even accusations leveled by another candidate that the application process was extended illegally past the 29th of January.
This year?
Yes, indeed, this year. Do you ascribe to this belief that the SU are, and I preferably a pithy answer on this, because we haven't got much time left.
Yeah.
Do you ascribe to this idea that the opacity of the SU, and do you really want to work as one of your key aims to open up the SU in terms of transparency?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that nobody knows what's really going on in the DSU, and they're absolutely right to feel that way, because we don't really know who works in the SU. And I've spoken to them, and they're wonderful people. I don't know why we haven't introduced them to the wider student public. I think that people would be very keen to get to know who they are.
You say they're wonderful people, but you have been slamming the organization. Are you worried that if you were to become SU president, that you would be sort of cutting off your own nose to spite your face sort of situation, where you have come in and you've come in having said very critical things about the SU before even becoming president?
No, I don't think that'd be a problem at all. There's a difference between people and policy. People can be, I do think they're wonderful people, but I don't think that they have the vision or the instincts or the know-how about how to make themselves more transparent, make themselves communicate that with the student body. I think they need some an outside candidate to come in and tell them what it's really like to be a student of Durham with the DSU, the way it is.
Looking at Durham in the wider world, you sit on the council, sit on the Senate. If you were to be president, how comfortable do you feel doing so, and also in a climate where there'll be a new vice chancellor, and a new vice chancellor who will, I presume, need a lot of report back onto student representation?
I think it'd be exciting, in all honesty. I think it'd be a great thing to do, especially with the new vice chancellor as well. I understand that the current vice chancellor is retiring at the end of this year, and we don't really know who the next vice chancellor is going to be. They've had some sort of suggestion about what they'd like. They want someone a little more diverse, or with a bit more of an international perspective. But I don't know who that person is yet. So I'm very excited to work with whoever it is, and can't wait to meet them.
A couple of last questions. So I mentioned sort of representation and so on. Are you comfortable putting forward an argument in Senate or in council that you don't fundamentally believe in, but that the students may?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I guess that sorts that one out.
Yeah.
How, in general, how have you found Durham as a sort of penultimate question, as a university, as a place to be, and are you looking forward to doing another year?
Yeah, I am excited to do it for doing another year. It's one of the things, Durham does have a bit of a bubble aspect about it, and it is quite hard to get out of Durham. There's so many places around County Durham that I haven't been to, I haven't seen yet. Sorry, and yeah, I would be excited to do another year at Durham, and I found it to be quite challenging in a lot of ways, but also very, very rewarding.
And finally, in one sentence, what would a SU presidency look like with you at the helm?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
I'll try.
Give me a moment. Let me think about this.
Fair. It's only on radio, so
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's not that I want to press you or anything, but an
strong,
instinctive response.
representative and competent.
Sorry.
Strong, representative and competent.
There we go. A triumvirate of words to end off today's interviews, and a very, very big thanks to Joe Simmons for that.
Thank you.
All the best.
Yeah.
For more of Purple Radio's interviews with candidates in the run-up to the SU election, click on the playlist now.